Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us is Linda Frank. She is state and nationally board certified reflexologist, licensed massage therapist, and founder and director of Reflexology Academy Northwest. She has a wonderful topic to share with us tonight on autoimmune. Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you for hosting this, Elizabeth. It's good to be here again. So I'll go right ahead and share my screen and launch right into, we'll get started. So I wanted to make sure it's known that the information given here is not recommended. It's meant as a resource that, and you may want to research on your own, and I encourage you to do that. So simply collecting information and systematically thinking about it. There is no spoon. Spoon feeding in the long run teaches us nothing but the shape of the spoon, and that's the novelist E.M. Forster. So again, I encourage you to do your own research. I also want to say there'll be some photographs, not many, of things that you might not want to hold on to. So I use a technique out of Hawaiian Huna, which is if it's something that I don't want to see in my mind's eye, lingering. When I wish I had this when I was studying anatomy and physiology in massage school back in 1980. Cancel for self, because so many of us would read symptoms and start getting a sore throat or start getting other symptoms as we were reading about them. So cancel for self is a way to tell your unconscious self, don't hang on to this. If I see an auto accident, I cancel for self. So anything that you see in this presentation that's slightly disturbing, just cancel for self, or put that universal no symbol right over it. So begin with, what is autoimmunity? Any disorder in which a person's immune system attacks their body's healthy tissue. So we have conditions of the skin, we have conditions of the joints, we have conditions of the nervous system and the brain. There are over 100 types of autoimmune disorders and multiple organs. So as varied as we can imagine, the brain, the blood, the GI tract, they can affect the nerves, the lungs, the skin, the muscles, the bone, the thyroid, very common autoimmune disorder. 24 million people in the United States are suspected or known to be suffering from an autoimmune disorder, and so many more because they haven't developed tests for a number of what are now considered autoimmune disorders. So I was going to invite those who are with us to throw into the chat an autoimmune disorder that either you have or that you know of someone that has this type of immune disorder. I mean, as a practitioner, complementary healthcare practitioner, I know a number of women especially who have disorders, autoimmune disorders of the thyroid, for instance, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's. We certainly have multiple sclerosis. I know a number of people with multiple sclerosis. Rheumatoid arthritis is another really common one. But if anyone wants to throw into the chat, and Elizabeth will monitor that. Anything in the chat?
Yes, we have multiple sclerosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, peripheral neuropathy, Sjogren's, I believe it is pronounced.
Sjogren's.
Thank you. So
That's a challenging spelling. SJOR, I think it is GRENS, Sjogren's. Yeah,
Sjogren's, yeah.
good. Yeah, and that's a dryness either of the mouth, the eyes, and or typically vaginal tissue. So the billion-dollar question is why? Why do we have autoimmune disorders? One theory is that the level, there's a higher level, it affects women more than it does men. And one of those theories is that there are higher levels of hormones in women. So oftentimes there's a virus or a bacterial infection and the immune system kicks into gear, and then healthy tissue, cells and tissues get caught up in the response. Sometimes there's a fragment of human tissue that is a virus sort of mimics and creates an antibody for it. And it's very similar that what the virus created is very similar to a human cell. And so the immune system goes after that cell, that human cell. Oftentimes in fighting cancer, again, pointing to scleroderma is another type of autoimmune disorder, and it's the thickening of the skin and connective tissue. And there's a leftover inflammatory response because of that flight. Factors impacting autoimmunity, genetics. And genetics is one that is hypothesized, but generally thought of as not so much a factor. Because we have something called epigenetics, where we have a little molecule that sits on top of the genes and determines how genes get expressed, whether they'll get expressed. So environmental factors can certainly impact our genetics. Weight, smoking, these are given by Johns Hopkins, one of the top medical centers in the country. Certain medications, so like statins, which are used to lower cholesterol, can trigger a statin-induced myopathy. Myopathy means problems with the muscles. Some of the more commonly cited factors, environmental factors, endocrine disruptors. So these are some endocrine disruptors. Pesticides, phenols, some of these will be familiar, phthalates. And oftentimes you'll see in shampoos and other cosmetic products, no phthalates. So that's something that you want to look for. And I think we'd probably find a lot of those phthalate-free products in at Marlene's. The flame retardants or fire retardants. It's remarkable that our state legislature, maybe 2-3 years ago, had a bill to eradicate or eliminate fire retardants in crib mattresses and infants' clothing, and they voted to let those substances remain. So just pretty remarkable. In our world currently, chemicals can be produced and they are not monitored until or pulled off the market until they are proven to be harmful. So rather than having them be proven to be safe before they're introduced, companies can put chemicals out in the market and until somebody flags them. And there are so many that it takes a lot for them to be flagged. Processed food is a huge factor. Toxins in air, water, food. Loud noises, believe it or not. So that's something that contributes certainly to stress. I had recently read that low decibel loud noises, the nervous system perceives as very threatening. So it's happening on a very subtle level. But those bass, the big speaker boom boom boxes that go by, or that if you might have a neighbor, unfortunately, that plays that kind of music with a really low bass, that can be pretty stressful for the nervous system, even if we're not consciously recognizing. Lack of sleep. Sleep so many factors are occurring during our sleep that contribute to our immune health. We also recently, there were some articles about the brain cleaning itself at night. We have something called glial cells, and they're largely the caretakers of our neurons, and the neurons are the cells of our nervous system. So sleep is a really important factor. Excessive work schedules. Again, if you pull a rubber band and you keep stretching it, and eventually it's going to snap. And so we need this rest and relaxation as a counterpoint to work. And a lot of people don't get that, unfortunately. Alcohol. So the ethanol in alcohol can erode the protective membrane around cells. An overly sterile environment. And I have a few more slides about that, about a bored nervous system. There's a hypothesis that our nervous systems may be bored. They're looking for something to do, so they attack our own tissue. Stress leading to inflammation. Inflammation is really sort of a key word in talking about autoimmune disorders. Plastics, again, being endocrine disruptors, and potentially can cause cancer, diabetes, reproductive disorders, and neurological impairments. So most importantly, do not heat food in a plastic container in the microwave. Always transfer it to a glass bowl, because we'll absorb some of that plastic. Similarly, I had read that if you freeze water, don't drink it. So if you throw it in the freezer and you're not going to use it for other purposes, don't ever let it thaw out and drink it, because it will absorb the qualities of the plastic. So we have stress leading to inflammation. Of course, our news doesn't help. And inflammation, it's a natural thing, and it's a useful thing for us. So it's the body's immune system's response to an irritant. If we get a foreign object, the body is trying to deal with that and find a way to remove it. But we do have inflammation as being a driving force of autoimmune disease. There is a global autoimmune institute, by the way, that has a lot of information on their website. But inflammation, I mean, it's beyond my ken to begin to understand all the IgA and IgG and the different aspects of inflammation. But by and large, something happens in the body. There's some kind of stress. The body responds with inflammation to try to bring in healing. And there's a substance called a cytokine, and I have a slide about them, that gets triggered. They will call in more cells to come in, so you get more inflammation. And then there's a type of cytokine that is that will suppress the inflammation when it's not needed anymore. And for some reason, occasionally, that those cytokine cells, they are either too weak or they're too few, but they're not suppressing the inflammation, and we get runaway inflammation. Some COVID survivors have antibodies that attack the body, not the virus, and showing up with autoimmune disorders. They're called autoantibodies. So in a condition like lupus, some B cells never learn to recognize a piece of viral RNA from the virus. No, sorry. They glom onto the debris from the human cells and mistake them from intruders. Anytime you have a combination of inflammation and cell death, there's a potential for autoimmune disease and autoantibodies. I mean, it is so prolific now, autoimmune disorders. So we have to ask ourselves, what's going on? What is it that we can't that our immune systems go awry and start attacking our own tissue. Here's the cytokine storm. And that's what a lot of people who died from COVID-19, it was the cytokine storm that they died from, not actually the virus itself. It was the response to the virus. Another article that I read fairly recently talked about NSAIDs causing acute pain, having acute pain lead to chronic pain. Because if the body is giving us inflammation that is going to help resolve an issue, and we interfere with that inflammation and short circuit that process, that we can end up with the system just trying again and again and again to resolve, and we're keeping it from resolving the issue, and therefore we can turn that acute pain to chronic pain. So it's just something to look into and talk to. If you have a naturopathic doctor, I would ask them about it. It is said that Tylenol is I believe it's the only analgesic that does not cause this process to occur. So all about balance. Garlic has an antiviral as well as antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory action. And I think it's kind of interesting that it's the substance that was used to keep vampires at bay. And, you know, thinking about cultures that don't have a lot of access to science, that certain viral or bacterial infections may have been looked at as, you know, something that sucks your energy away and ends up as a story like a vampire. We have sauerkraut or kimchi. And I had read that if you eat sauerkraut or kimchi every day, you will not get the flu. Now, again, I'm not saying that's your silver bullet, but it is said that this is a way to keep our systems healthy. And that is in part because of the activity of sauerkraut or kimchi on our gut microbia. So speaking about inflammation, about our having too sterile an environment, and this was an article from my Danish reflexology trainers, called Inflammation, Enemy and Friend. So it's both, you know, it's not about fighting inflammation, says Peter and Dorte. It's about trying to understand why it's out of control and help the immune system find a better balance. And again, we're talking about balance. That we use so many antimicrobial sprays and cleaning products, and some of that can be helpful, but we'll see in some upcoming slides that being exposed to dirt, being exposed to animals can be a good thing. I had read years ago that kids who sucked their thumb until they were about 5 years old or older had healthier immune systems. I'm not suggesting we all put our fingers in our mouths, especially nowadays, but there may be something to the fact that kids who play in the dirt, you know, eat dirt. Again, you can get some roundworms and other things. So there are certainly some negatives. Again, I'm not suggesting eating dirt, but vegetables that we pull out of the earth, if we don't have pesticides and other things that we wouldn't want to have the residue, a dirt residue on our food, it might not be such a bad thing. So if anyone's ever heard of the boy who lived in the bubble, so this is the bubble, his immune system couldn't handle exposure to any what we call antigens. So he lived in way too sterile an environment and could not come out of that. I don't know what happened in adulthood if he had to live in the bubble forever and ever, but lymphatics certainly play a role in autoimmunity. So this is from an article in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology and Pediatric Rheumatology, Hospital for Special Surgery, Division of Rheumatology. Lymphatic vessels are critical for clearing fluid and inflammatory cells from inflamed tissue, and also have roles in immune tolerance. Lymphatic dysfunction may contribute to the pathophysiology of rheumatic autoimmune diseases. So we have these one-way valves, lymphatic valves, and what can happen is when we have inflammation, these valves can get stressed and stretched. And if the stress on them is too great, then they may not rebound. And so you can get more fluid. And this is our cleansing system. This is the whole lymphatic system here. And we have these things called lymph nodes. So we have these really tiny vessels that go along, and then there's a collection of nodes, and that filters out pathogens. And then they go into larger nodes, and then they go into, this is called the cisterna chyli. It's this wonderful collecting duct. And then it comes up and gets filtered and goes back into our venous system, which is the blood that goes back to the heart. But if you get leakage, if these valves, if these vessels get too stressed, you can get leakage, and that's when you can have a role. That's when it plays a role. The lymphatics play a role in autoimmunity. So we want to help our lymph, to help flush our lymph, and we can do that in less than a minute. I mean, you can look up online, there are many videos about, 5-minute lymphatic flush, 8-minute lymphatic flush, 20-minute lymphatic flush. You can get as detailed as you want, but you can do this in a minute or less. So please don't laugh at my squiggly drawing over here or numbering over here, but I'm doing it with my left hand. And if you've ever tried to draw with the mouse, it's pretty challenging. But our main duct before the lymph goes back into the venous system is here in the thoracic duct. So it's the collecting duct, the big collecting duct. We have one on the right side, but it only handles, as you can see, the shaded area. The one on the right only handles the upper right quadrant of the body, the head, the right arm, and the right side of the abdomen. So this one on the left handles both legs, for instance, and everything from the waist down. So this one's really important. They're both important, but we can just, and you might want to do this now, just do some gentle rubbing on that area. It's below your clavicle, or what we call your collarbone is your clavicle. And then you'll feel your ribs there. There's a little hollow before you get to the sternum, which is the breastbone, that hard bone here that's sort of triangle shaped. So you'll find this area, there's a little hollow in there, and you can just rub. And you can also tap that area as a way to stimulate the lymphatics. And again, whether or not you have an autoimmune disorder or want to prevent one, it's said that a lot of illnesses take up to 20 years to set in. So that's why people suddenly can wake up one day with something is really seriously wrong. And the more things that we can do to support our system in every way we possibly can, the healthier we'll be. And it's never too late. It's never too late. You can turn things around. So we rub here at the main portal, then we can also go under our arm and just gently squeeze each side. and think of moving that fluid over toward this main portal. We also have lymph nodes in our neck, so we could stroke down our neck, sort of behind your ears, pulling that lymph down. And again, you can look up, there are wonderful videos on lymphatic drainage. Then we want to think about, we've got a lot of lymphatic tissue in our gut. We've got Peyer's patches, we've got the omentum. It's this big fatty tissue that covers the organs. So we can just think of massaging, giving our belly a nice massage. And we've got this cisterna chyli, this main cistern here. And so think of pushing that fluid toward the cistern and then drawing it up toward the main portals. And then we have main lymph nodes, the inguinal area. So at the top of the thigh, in the front of the thigh, where that crease would be, where your pelvis would meet your leg. And we can rub that. These are just the big collecting areas. And then think of pulling that up toward the cisterna chyli. So just in general, to give our lymphatic system a little encouragement. There is lymph massage, also called manual lymph drainage. And there are specialized massage therapists who specialize in this. And then we have reflexology lymph drainage, or RLD. This is a client of mine. This was her first session, and this was the second session. So you can see quite a difference in the tissue buildup, the fluid buildup in her legs. Lymph flow and fascia are highly interwoven. So lymph vessels path their way in the loose fascial layers, and the lymph capillaries absorb the lymph from the ground substance of the fascia. That's a lot of tech speak on fascia, but the fascia is like a spider webbing that connects everything in our body. And some are calling the fascia now our 13th body system, attributing the ability of this system attributing to this system the ability to enable all of our different body systems to talk to each other. So we want to consider fascia when we consider things that go awry in the body. It's said that the fascia's nervous system is faster than the actual nervous system because it is bathed in fluid. So this is what fascia looks like. It's this beautiful, again, this sort of spider webbing. And it's dripping with this hyaluronic acid. And you can actually, there's a video called Strolling Under the Skin. It's done by a French physician, Gumberto. And you can watch these fibers dividing and the fluid moving around. It's got a vasculature, meaning it's got vessels. It's got its own nervous system. It covers muscles. It covers everything in the body. It covers organs. And it needs to be hydrated. This is an example of what we call a fascial chain, or an anatomy train. Anatomy trains. Thomas Myers was the massage body worker. He was a Rolfer, actually trained with Ida Rolf. And he does these dissections, dissections of the human body. When they would do dissections of the human body, they would normally take the fascia, scoop it out, and throw it in a bucket under the table. It was like, let's get rid of this stuff so we can get to the good stuff, the organs. But it turns out that the fascia plays a tremendous role in our health. They think that's how people can end up with breast cancer in the brain, for instance, not brain cancer, but breast cancer, that these cells are talking to each other and can migrate around. So this is showing this one chain of fascia. This is the superficial back line coming down. This is your hamstring. This is a hamstring on of a person. And instead of stopping right at the knee, where we have in anatomy and physiology, we have something called origin and insertion of muscles. And it's like it starts here and it ends here, but it doesn't really. So Tom Myers says, are there really 600 muscles in the body, or is there one muscle in 600 fascial wrappings? So here you see the hamstring going right into the muscles of the back of the calf, to the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle, and all the way down to the foot. So we have, when people say they have plantar fasciitis, for instance, that problem, that's an inflammation supposedly of the tissue in the bottom of the foot, and that's a whole nother story. But there can be a problem anywhere in this whole fascial line, and you can see it not only goes up this is from the bottom of the foot, up the calf, all the way into the hamstring, all the way up the back, and this is the back of the head. So there's fascia. This is one complete integrated chain of fascia, and it wraps around to the eyebrows. So if someone ends up with pain in the bottom of their feet, there could be a glitch anywhere in this whole chain, and it's going to get snagged at the least elastic part of that chain. So so I just wanted to, kind of share a little bit about the fascinating aspects of fascia. This is one piece of areolar or adipose superficial fascia, one piece of fascia of B, who was the donor. And this is Gil Headley. He's in Colorado. And he likens this fascial covering to, it's like the rind of a grapefruit. So again, we cancel for self, but this tissue is all integrated, all connected. So this was 8 tips for getting our lymph flow going, breathing deeply. So our breath, we actually can stretch out the lungs, and it gives a suck in the larger lymphatic vessels and really helps with lymphatic flow. Also the diaphragm, that breathing muscle, kind of tucked in under our rib cage, also massages organs. So deep breathing overall is fabulous. Raising the arms. I once read an article that breast cancer in women, it's hypothesized that some of that is because of all the typing, that we do, all this keeping the arms tucked in close to the chest, not doing enough movement with our arms to move the lymph through our axillary nodes, through the nodes, the lymph nodes that are under our arms, in our armpits. So we want to make sure the lymph vessels don't have an apparatus like the heart to push blood and move blood. So a lot of lymph movement relies on movement. So we'll see here also daily motion, moderation the best, and eating a healthy diet. Bouncing is beneficial to the lymphatic system. So whether you're jogging, jumping rope, whether you have a trampoline to bounce on, or just standing on your balls of your feet and bouncing up and down, holding on to something and bounce a little bit, can help to get your lymph flowing. Tom Myers, a recent dissection class that I did with him, he says, do the dead cockroach. So you lay on your back, you put your feet up, your legs up in the air, you put your hands up in the air, and then you close your fists, and you do a similar kind of action with your toes, so squeeze your toes, squeeze your foot together and flex them, and do this, 15 times or something. And that's a good way to get your lymph system flowing. Tissue dehydration. One primary issue, this is from the MELT method blog, which was, and MELT is a form of, is a method of working with your fascia to hydrate your fascia with rollers. And then she's got a hand and foot melt kit, which helps to hydrate the fascia in your hands and your feet. If you've got any kind of foot issues, any kind of trigger finger, anything like that in your hands, it's a wonderful way to get increased mobility. But from the MELT blog, one primary issue is connective tissue dehydration. So I believe this is a precursor and a catalyst for autoimmune diseases. When you are dehydrated, your tissue is going to be constricted, and you will not have good nerve connection. You won't have good circulation. So keeping hydrated is really, really critical. So both taking in water as well as using movement or rollers or dry brushing to hydrate our tissue. So getting back to causes, the granddaddy of them all is now articulated by many. Most of what I read attributes a lot of autoimmunity to gut dysbiosis, and dysbiosis meaning we have an imbalance of good bacteria to bad bacteria in our gut. And that can lead to something called leaky gut, which is also known as altered intestinal permeability. So here is a drawing of, this is a blood vessel here, and our lining of our intestines is a single layer of cells. So it doesn't take much for there to be a breach in between the cells and for pathogens to get into the blood system. And then we have a reaction, a generalized reaction that can end up anywhere. It doesn't just mean you'll end up with an irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's disease or any other of the bowel disorders. But this, because our blood goes everywhere in our body, we can end up again with a problem in the thyroid, a problem in a joint. I just love these slides. These are dyed and magnified, but we have E. coli in our gut. And while it can cause food poisoning, most strains are helpful to us. Again, all about balance. So in the gut, E. coli makes vitamins K and B and repels disease-causing bacteria. In human feces, a bacterium 50 times longer than E. coli. And these bacteria can affect our health, mood, and even our personalities. Indeed, they have done studies that, for instance, in the Netherlands, they did a study with depression and found 5 particular strains of bacteria that can make the difference between whether somebody is just a little bit depressed or whether they go into a major depression over, episodes in their life. And it's said that the gut bacteria may even be determining our behavior, what we eat, and other behaviors. So we also have streptococcus. They're found on the skin, in the mouth, in the respiratory tract, and in our gut. These are daughter cells of strep. So the upshot of most of what I read is really about food, about the role of the gut, about having a healthy microbiome, about eating well. And this is Hippocrates. So we're going way back in history. The wisdom of Hippocrates now would be wisely heeded, to let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Intermittent fasting is supposed to reduce inflammation. And I have been trying out 14-hour fasting. I tried 16-hour fasting. That was too long for me. So 14-hour fasting is if you eat your last meal at 6 p.m., then you don't eat breakfast until 8 a.m. And this is doable. And even if you don't do it every day, what this has done is made me so incredibly aware of how much better I feel not eating late at night, not snacking on things, on really honoring my organs and giving them the rest that they are due. So even if I didn't do 12 hours, I mean, just that alone has been incredibly beneficial. But doing 14 hours, I also noticed I've had belly fat since I was, 8 years old or something, since I can remember, I've had extra belly fat. And I noticed just the other day, wow, it seems like that's going down. And some people do intermittent fasting as a means of losing weight. That wasn't my motivation. My motivation was really to give my organs a rest. Dr. Andrew Weil, for those of you who've heard some of my previous talks, he's a favorite of mine, and he's got an anti-inflammatory food pyramid. He talks a lot and writes a lot about Mediterranean style diet. So salmon, avocado, foods that are rich in fats and omega-3, berries. We're back to, I love this quote from Virginia Woolf. One cannot think well, love well, or sleep well if one has not dined well. I highly recommend, if you have an autoimmune disorder, seeing a functional medicine provider, a doctor who specializes in functional medicine, or a naturopath. Traditional MDs get, and I think this is still true, I learned this in massage school, that they get one class in nutrition. And again, since food can be an antigen, so whether it's gluten or dairy and I mean, you can try to do elimination diets on your own, but you may want to seek out the help of a functional medicine provider or a naturopath. There's something called the Walls Protocol. She's an MD who was diagnosed with MS and went on a paleo diet and found that it altered her symptoms really significantly. So you can get this book, a used copy, for very inexpensively if you're interested to look into that. If you can't cook, and again, I'm not recommending specifics. These are two companies that I've used, Sunbasket and Green Chef. But they have everything from a 10-minute lunch. They send their organic ingredients and you put them together into a meal. They're fairly good meals. They almost always provide leftovers for me. So that may be an alternative for those of you who can't find the time to go shopping and put meals together, put recipes together. It is one way to try to improve what you eat, because so many people eat on the fly and are eating prepared foods that have that are processed foods. Something else that comes to mind for me is Marlene sells Vitamineral greens, and that's my backup. If I can't get greens into my meal, I'll take 2 capsules of Vitamineral greens. I have to say this, I didn't care for the powder. So it comes in both powder form and it comes in capsule form. If you're making a smoothie with, other things, and things like yogurt, which are good in terms of providing probiotics. A lot of the some of the probiotic capsules aren't necessarily what they claim to be. So, again, think about sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, kefir, to provide good probiotics for you. That's providing good bacteria that helps to keep the bad bacteria at a minimum. So a little bit about the gut-brain axis, and I know we're nearing time, but the vagus nerve, which is the principal component of the parasympathetic nervous system, and some of you have seen my my vagus nerve presentation. 80% of the vagus nerve's fibers are afferent, meaning they're giving feedback from what's happening in the organs. And the vagus nerve can play a huge role in what's happening in your immune system, in terms of dampening peripheral inflammation and decreasing intestinal permeability. By the way, if you have leaky gut, my understanding is it's not that difficult to plug up those leaks, and you can do it with good food. In fact, there's a slide coming up. Hopefully, we'll get to it. But they're now able to image a leaky gut, like with a what do I want to say, like a CT kind of scan, and they can actually see in 5 minutes time that that repairs can be made with the right foods. So stress, of course, also inhibits the vagus nerve and affects the gastrointestinal tract. So again, eliminating stress and working with the vagus nerve to prevent inflammation. Here's the vagus nerve, and here's all the organs of digestion as well as heart and lung that it impacts. Reducing stress, this Kelly McGonigal TED Talk is fabulous. It's about 15 minutes, and it's called How to Make Stress Your Friend. It's really worthwhile. It's a lot about reframing how we look at stress, breathing to reduce stress. Some recommend, breathing out for 2 times as long as you breathe in. There's a wonderful book called Breath by James Nestor, and it gives you lots of different breathing modalities in the back, but it's really interesting stories about breathing. I highly, highly recommend that book. Dr. Andrew Weil has a breathing method we've done in some of these presentations I made. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8, and do that 4 times. He says if you do it more than 4 times when you're first starting out, it could be overload. So just 4 times, easy to do. If you can't fall back to sleep, do your 4, 7, 8 breathing, or do this, breathe in a long breath and breathe out for twice as long. Put your fingers in the crease to help you breathe deep. There's a nice point called the solar plexus point in the hand on this crease. I know I have to go faster. Candace Pert was a researcher who wrote a lot about, she was a pioneer really in how emotions affect the body. What I want to say is now they are, so we used to have immunology was a division of medicine. Psychology was a division of medicine. Neurology was a division of medicine. And endocrinology was a division of medicine. Now they're saying they are so interrelated that they are calling this study psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. It is a new discipline, and it studies how psychology, how our endocrine system, how our immune system are all, and our nervous system are all interrelated. The hub is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. The brain interprets something as threatening. It's going to secrete a hormone that's going to tell the adrenal glands to secrete cortisol. Cortisol is going to suppress the immune system so that you can fight or flight or flee. On a long-term basis, you're going to get immunosuppression. So when you have stress lasting a long time where your adrenal glands are putting out lots of cortisol, you're going to have immunosuppression. So we don't want that. We want the immune system to be balanced. We don't want those cytokine storms, the excess. That's not good. And we don't want an oversuppression of the immune system. We want that balance. So this is the HPA axis. In the middle of your thumb, you can just put your own thumb, one on top of the other, and put your middle finger down here. It's called the thenar eminence. Don't worry too much about getting any exact location, but you can really palpate it and you'll feel a really sensitive spot, and you can just hold those 2 points. And what you're doing is you're telling your pituitary and your hypothalamus, HP, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, to tell the adrenal glands, okay, moderate this, okay, moderate the amount of cortisol, relax, chill out, get this balanced, okay? So middle of the thumb. I know this is a lot of information I'm throwing at you at the same time, but here are what things that we can do to help prevent an autoimmune disorder to the best of our ability, or to support our system if we have one. Reduce antibiotics, certainly. I talked with a client who has rheumatoid arthritis, and I said to her, I asked her, did you happen to have taken a large dose of antibiotics before you were diagnosed, before you came down with the symptoms of RA? She said, yes, she was on antibiotics for almost a year. And then she developed the symptoms of RA. So antibiotics, again, anti-life, bio-life. So kills all the bacteria. If you have to be on antibiotics, they're life-saving. No question about it, but they are overused and we get a lot of them. So I'm politically active also in, when you see an email come through about, or an article about the farms, the pork farms and dairy farm, not dairy, but beef farms, they throw antibiotic into the feed, the animal feed to keep to buff them up for weight, making them heftier. And then that gets washed into our water system and into the soil. So we want to be, proactive if we can and discourage the overuse of antibiotics. I had bronchitis a couple of years ago. Bronchitis can be viral and it can be bacterial. Antibiotics do nothing for a viral infection. And yet the doctor immediately prescribed me an antibiotic. I said, but how do you know? Because if you are fighting the bacterial infection, right? And if you happen to have a viral form of bronchitis and you're killing off all the bacteria and viruses fight each other. Okay, they balance each other. So if you kill off all the bacteria, well, what's going to happen if you have a viral infection? It's going to be able to exacerbate. So, but a lot of people go to their doctor and they just want an antibiotic for something, that it makes them feel like, but if it's not applicable, don't ask for one. So let's reduce the amount of medication that we take, get exercise, good food, hydrate, sleep well, dry brushing, or just that, little bit of stimulation on our lymphatic system and reducing our stress. The vagus nerve, here is a place in the body where it comes external. And if you're anywhere in this area, so if you just stick your finger straight into your ear before you get to the ear canal, you're going to be on the vagus nerve, on the external vagus nerve. And you can just periodically reach up and hold it. You might find it as you hold it, it starts to ache a little bit. Just hold it then until it goes down. You can hold one ear at a time. You can try both at the same time. More dramatic interventions, helmets, vagal implant, fecal implant. So helmets, these are worms, whipworms, hookworms, threadworms, and sometimes they will introduce them when someone has an inflammatory bowel disease, MS, asthma, because we have modern hygienic practices that prevent us from having parasitic worms. And sometimes the parasitic worms do a good thing in us. I'm not saying go out and eat some worms on yourself. Again, you'd want to do this under the guidance of a physician, but just know that this is being practiced. Also, vagus nerve, there's an implant. It's like a little pacemaker. For rheumatoid arthritis, they're getting great results. Non-invasive, there's also a non-invasive vagus nerve stimulator and fecal transplant. So they take fecal matter from a healthy person, and they either do a colonoscopy sort of thing, or you can take capsules, and finding that that they can introduce a healthy gut microbiome by using somebody else's fecal matter. This was stem cell therapy, rheumatoid arthritis breakthrough, also been used for MS. And again, you'd want to do research, good research into this. Something really simple that we can do. It's 5:58. I'm being conscious of the time. Masaru Emoto, it was a Japanese researcher who photographed water molecules that he exposed to positive and negative messages. So these are 3 of his books. Here's what he found. Here's a photograph of a water molecule exposed to this saying, I can't do it. And here's to I can do it. Beautiful, well-formed crystal. Here's the water of Fujiwara Dam, and the same water after Buddhist monks prayed over it. So our bodies are approximately 70% water, right? So write words of wellness to put under your glass of water. I know it sounds kooky, but it's free for one thing, and it can't hurt you. So why not, if our bodies are 70% water, why not feed our cells healthy messages, right? Homeopathy, if you know about a homeopathic remedy, there's nothing of the substance left in the remedy because it's all been diluted in water. Water has very unique properties that capture the essence of whatever it's exposed to. You put a rusty nail in, it's going to absorb the properties of that rusty nail. So homeopathy, they take a drop of a substance, they dilute it in 99 parts water, they shake it, they dilute it again, they shake it, and all that's left is the energy of that substance. So there are actually now on the National Institutes of Health website, there are articles about energy medicine. There's a company called Luminous that makes a sleep patch and a pain patch, and there is nothing in that sleep patch or that pain patch except the energy of the substances that they cultivated and that they extracted. So it's not so woo-woo science anymore. It's actually getting to be science that the universe is 5% matter. That leaves 95% that we don't necessarily know about, right? So there's dark matter, there's dark energy, there's energy. Why not take a chance? And again, not expecting that tomorrow you put the message under your water, tomorrow you're going to feel fine. But knowing that illness can take 20 years to set in physically, it's going to take some time. It might not be 20 years, and hopefully not. But if it is, if we don't have illness now and we do these things, heck, I want to use this as a way to continue being healthy for the rest of my life. So, and we write it as though it is. So not I want to be, but I am, or just little simple phrases. Healthy, functioning immune system. Happy, healthy cells, things like that. Can't hurt. This is Louise Hay. She cured herself of cancer with reflexology and with positive affirmations. So I love every cell of my body. Really, truly, look in your mirror and think about the messages that you subtly give yourself every single day. That's what your cells are absorbing. And we saw the impact of those water cells. And when you think about it, most cultures have holy water of some sort, right? So there's probably something to it. So based on Louise Hayes' experience, and she wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life, think about what messages you're giving to your cells right now. So she says, if you believe you're a bad person, your cells are listening. If you believe you're sick, your cells are listening. Likewise, if you believe that you are a beautiful being worthy of love and that you're healthy, your cells are listening. So there used to be a saying, every day in every way, I am getting better and better, or something like that. It might have been not Joseph Chilton Pierce. Anyway, he was a minister at a non-denominational church in New York. I can't think of his name right now, but this is a book, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, that genes and DNA do not control our biology. Instead, DNA is controlled by signals from the outside the cell, including the energetic messages emanating from our positive and negative thoughts. So really catching yourself when you find yourself giving yourself one of those negative messages, turn it around. And I can change. And there's a technique called tapping where they tap on acupuncture, several places where the acupuncture meridians come most external, and you can get tapping books at a library, and people are having phenomenal success with tapping, where you acknowledge a negative. I'm feeling sad right now, and I love and accept myself completely. It really is a lot about self-love. J.K. Rowling, we do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. So if anyone wants to stay and has questions, I don't know if people are still here, but I'm open to a couple questions for anyone who wants to stay, and then we'll say our farewells. And I thank you so much for attending. I hope you've gotten some useful information out of this. And I hope you give
Linda.
yourself lots of love. Thank you, Tom.
It was great seeing you, Linda.
Likewise, Chris. Chris works a mean schedule, and I'm so glad you could be here.
It worked out really well. And just so you know, in the fall, I am starting reflexology classes.
You are? How exciting. Where?
In Fort Collins at the community college, they have an integrative health program that I've been dabbling in. And yeah, so I'm hoping in the fall, I'm just going to go back full time.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And by the way, we can get you certified. I just started a program with a colleague of mine who has a school in Austin, Texas. We're calling it the Interstate Teaching Collective. So people can, in order to get certified, they can take their credits online with one of our programs for anatomy and physiology and all the, the stuff that they'll need. You with nursing background and all that stuff, you would, or medical background, you would have some credits anyway that you could utilize. And then we'll have hands-on tutors in different areas where there's no school. So, but I'm glad you found a school that you can get.
Yeah.
At least
It's wonderful that the director is of the course or the program is amazing. She's just, it's awesome. I'm so excited about it. I can't wait.
Yeah, integrative medicine. So the program that Chris is in is not an unusual program anymore. There are more and more programs in integrative, what we call integrative or complementary medicine. And now I'm seeing college programs in like health coaching. So a real acknowledgement that really the basics, kind of everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten, like, get a good night's sleep, drink water, stay hydrated, eat good food, reduce your stress. I know to some people that seems like, what, how do I do that? But just some simple, lots of good information, lots of websites, lots of coaches out there. There are ways to do it. Yeah. So, and reflexology.
And they even have a course on that PNI.
So when you
started talking about that, I was like, I know what that is. But I would, if you wouldn't mind, can you email me your slides? The slide are
for your own use. Yeah.
Yes, for my own use. Just for some of the websites, I can't write that fast. So
it goes by fast. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you could do that, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. And oftentimes I'll put them up also when we post the video online.
Oh, okay. Or
Yeah.
tell me where wherever I can get them. But
Okay.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much.
Thank you for
Oh,
attending.
thanks for being here, Chris.
Oh, well, thank you for putting it on. I
Oh,
wish I
yeah.
could be out there so I could come to your store or whatever it is you have.
Yeah,
Definitely.
the store is remarkable. It's such a resource for the community, such a gift. Really is good foods and lots of resources and products, all kinds of products that cosmetic, what do I want to say, like sunscreen and things of that sort. Yeah, it's
Right.
and they have
Yeah.
a deli. Yeah, it's
Yeah, the deli's fantastic. You can come in, grab some delicious grub, and then do some shopping. And yeah, all of our products are sustainable, eco-friendly, and we always do really great research to make sure we're providing good products to the community.
Yeah.
and they
Good
have
for
a great
you.
magazine, and you can look up past issues of the magazine to see if I think you can search by terms, Elizabeth, can you, the back issues? But there's a terrific magazine that I'll hold one up that you can get on and have access to.
Oh, okay.
online.
Yeah,
Sound Outlook.
it's on
Oh,
our
awesome.
website, and you can download PDF
Okay.
forms of those, but we also post the articles and recipes onto our website too, so that way you can access it.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
And the recipe, I still am making those oatmeal cookies with
Oh, yeah?
cranberry and
That's fantastic.
my